Welcome to Mary McCorvey Experience Over Expectations podcast, which you can find on YouTube, Substack, and any place you find your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe today.
Welcome to Experience Over Expectation. Today's guest doesn't just play music, he embodies its mission. Rick DellaRatta is the world-class jazz pianist, composer, and the founder of Jazz for Peace, a movement born from poetry in the ashes of 9/11 and carried forward by melody, mission, and love. From performing for world leaders to launching benefit concerts in war zones, Rick has proven that music can do more than just entertain. He's been called one of the most significant cultural figures of our time, not for accolades or ego, but because he keeps choosing art as activism and harmony as hope. His podcast, The Final Solution is Love, is both a platform and a philosophy, reminding us that no matter the path, no matter the pain, the final solution is love. Rick, welcome to the program. I'd like to start where we see where music met meaning for you.
Yes, well, I want to say I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And I did notice that there's something going on with music that was very special when I was about 6 years old, and a piano came into the house that I was in, that I was, growing up in, on Christmas Eve. So on Christmas Day, I started kind of improvising and just playing the piano on my own, not knowing anything about music or anything, or how to read music. And I did notice there was something very special about these notes and these sounds and this lineage that seemed to go back a long way with the piano. I mean, I could tell it wasn't built yesterday, and there was just something to be explored and something that was beyond maybe natural, uses. There was something maybe magical and spiritual about it, is what I kind of noticed.
When you were 6 years old?
Well, because I was playing things and listening and playing and listening and
Right.
playing and listening. And unbeknownst to me, if you do that, it actually raises your level of human consciousness is one way to describe it. Other people just say, I think, not synergy, but frequency. So there's these descriptions, but they're all kind of the same thing. But it raises your frequency, as some would say. And by raising your frequency up, that is in itself somewhat magical, and whenever we do things that raise our frequency, it feels kind of wondrous. And so I was getting that wondrous feeling all by myself at a very young age.
That's fantastic. And did you take lessons, or are you self-taught?
Well,
Or
then,
both?
well, both, because then I was, after doing that enough times with nobody around, because I was shy, I didn't want anyone to hear me, what I was getting out of this piano, but it did eventually work. It leaked over. The information somehow leaked to my mother, who put me in piano lessons. And then I did have, confirmation from these great classical masters who my teacher was asking me to learn, from Chopin to, Mozart to Beethoven and all those classic guys. And then, of course, at the same time, I also liked the music on the radio that my friends were listening to at school. So I was noticing that music was a real big thing, and I had no reason not to keep going forward in whichever way I was doing, whether it was at the piano or by listening or just, whatever. Music seemed to be a natural path forward for all of us in one form or other.
And when did you get into jazz?
Well, you could say I got into it when I was doing those improvisations on my own. So maybe my very first exploration was somehow tied to jazz, because it was improvisation and it was creativity. And I think jazz is a way of freedom and creative expression. And so any sort of creative expression of freedom, they're all tied together one way or the other. And since I was doing that as music, it was, something that related to what jazz the true meaning of jazz. But I did finally find out what jazz was when I was in a library, and I kind of opened a drawer, just being a curious George. And I saw this big drawer. I'm like, what's in this giant drawer? And I just opened it and I saw all these records. And then I'm like, well, what are these records? And then I started picking them up. I've never heard of any of these people. And then I saw that they were musicians, and, it looked powerful. So I started taking them out of the library.
That's a great story. That's a great story. Now, did you form your own jazz band or did you join one?
There was something called a stage band in junior high school, I believe, or high school, maybe around there, ninth, 10th grade, something like that. They had a stage band. And I was in that because, I played music, and I somehow ended up in that stage band at school. And that teacher, he had a weird way of telling me that in his eyes, I had serious musical talent. I mean, he said it in a very strange way. It was almost like he was mad at me. I was like, it was a scary way to tell me. I didn't know what to think of the way he kind of put that to me. But, he kind of whispered in my ear. I think he walked into a class. I was in another class and whispered in my ear, "You sounded great," something like that. And it was scary almost. And I was like, wow, this guy, where's he getting that from? I don't know. And how is he noticing that? So I have no idea. But at that time, I did have my music teacher also. I mean, I was her favorite, and she really, thought I had a lot of talent. So there were some, different things coming from different sides regarding my abilities. And one thing did lead to another. I started to get asked to be in all kinds of crazy configurations, which included grown-up groups that wanted me to play in their band, for grown-up parties, whether it was a wedding reception or a private party or whatever, where they had bands, and they would pick me up. They promised my mother, that they're going to pick me up, bring me back, all that stuff. And I wasn't going to do anything too crazy there because, they were grown-ups, there was alcohol and all that stuff. So there was one thing after another. I did have to quit my paper route, to be honest with you. Full disclosure.
So has music always been your profession?
Since that paper route, the jokes do get better as we go along, by the way, but I just thought I'd throw that in. I mean, like I said, I was a paper boy. That was my first idea to try to make a few dollars while I was young. And then I did blow out of that once. Actually, when my mother told me she wanted me to be the church organist, take over from her, because she was actually the church organist, and she wanted me to take over from her. And that was the end. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to, with all the other things, there's no way I'm going to be able to keep that paper route.
So tell us about how Jazz for Peace was formed.
Well, that was born, I don't know if they call it auspicious. I had an auspicious beginning. I don't know if that's the word, but people like to give things like, those big words. It was born on the top of a roof in the Lower East Side, less than a quarter of a mile away from the Twin Towers where I was living. I didn't realize I was so close to the Twin Towers because New York is so dense, and I wouldn't think of that area. That area is was a long ways away as far as I was concerned. Well, that's way down there, but it's not far because New York is an island and it's small. And I didn't realize I was less than a quarter of a mile away, really, technically. I just thought it was, because you had these neighborhoods are famous. You'd have to go past Soho to get there. So, the Village and all that stuff.
Right.
But anyway, I was less than a quarter of a mile away, and I did get a phone call from a photographer who was taking pictures of me the day before. And she had a job on Wall Street, and a call came. She was at her job, and a call came in to speak to her boss, and it was her son, and the son was in the other tower, and something had happened to the tower next to it. And she got really frazzled and called me because we had spent the day that day before, and she didn't know who to call. So she figured, dial my number. And so I went up on the roof to see what all the, hopefully to calm her down and say, hey, someone flew a kite into there. Don't worry about it. But that's not what I saw. And what happened was, eventually words were so powerful that were coming out of me. I ended up writing them down on a piece of paper, and I had a poem. And that poem was called Jazz for Peace. And all I really had to do was live up to the words of that poem to get to where we are today. And that's what I've done every single day since.
Well, there's a lot of time between then and now.
24 years.
24 years. And how would you describe Jazz for Peace today? And what are its biggest achievements between then and now?
Well, at the time when I wrote that poem, they locked down the whole country. And when they opened the country up, the first thing that I had to do was get on a plane to go to a jazz festival that I was a headliner at, which doesn't happen every day either. And I just happened to be the big cheese headliner at this festival. And they told me there's going to be 8,500 people there. And they're all going to be here listening to you because you're the headliner. You're the top billing on this thing. So I recited that poem. And I felt bad for people like Edgar Allan Poe and all these great poets who never got in front of 10 people, let alone 8,000, in their lifetime. And they're real poets. But I had my one poem and it got heard by 8,500 people. So after that, I did get interviewed by someone who heard about the poem all the way back in New York. People were hearing about this, me reciting this poem. And I said to him, jazz is like a great gift to mankind in the world that we don't acknowledge. And I was telling them because so many jazz artists had to go to Europe to make a living. So many of them died in poverty. So many of them were acknowledged long after they were dead. And I said this art form, is looked at worldwide as our greatest gift to the world, but we don't acknowledge it. So it's like you're sitting on a prize that you refuse to accept as a prize, And so now Jazz for Peace is a worldwide prize that the world could do itself a lot of good by accepting the honor of the fact that this is, a wondrous thing about the world is the 24 years of Jazz for Peace, of which all of us should be thankful for, and all of us should embrace and accept the award.
How long is the poem?
It's only it's only like, what I normally do is I'll improvise something and then I will recite the poem, making up something completely new at that moment, if you wanted to hear the poem.
I do want to hear the poem, and I'm sure those who are listening and watching would like to hear the poem.
Okay. Now, I did have a request for today. I could maybe mix it all in or something like that. Like the request I had was for a song called Sunny. I don't know if I could mix the poem into that. I could recite the poem and then go into that little melody or something like that. Does that make sense?
It's up to you.
Okay.
It is being improvised.
Everything's going to be improvised right now. I will never be able to play it again. I promise you. Whatever I do today is for posterity. And if you ask me to repeat it, even at gunpoint, I couldn't repeat it. It's all made up right now. I have no idea what I'm going to do. So let's see what happens. I hear Jazz for Peace. Coming through the trees. And in my heart it fills me like a celebration. I see the light. And I want. Inspired by the past contributions of those that came before. And laid the groundwork for us to build on in this universal language that is a gift for all mankind. we speak it. People are inspired by the creativity and artistry that stands for peace and intelligence and humanity that leads to reaching potential that we have in our souls. Our total conscience and see the gift of giving. It's our greatest privilege. Jazz for peace. Sunny. Yesterday my life was filled with rain. Sunny, you smiled at me and really eased the pain. Dark days are gone and my bright days are here. My sunny one shines so sincere. Sunny one so true. I love you. Sunny, thank you for the sunshine. Sunny, thank you for the love you brought my way. You gave to me your all in all, and now I feel like I'm 10 feet tall. Sunny one so true, I love you. My life was torn like a wind-blown sand. Rock was formed when we held hands. Sunny one so true. I love you. Sunny, thank you for the truth you let me see. Sunny, thank you for the facts from A to Z. My life was born like a wind-blown sand. A rock was formed when we held hands. Sunny one so true. I love you. I love you. Just for peace.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, that was very inspiring.
Okay, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Very much, very much. And I know that our listeners and our viewers enjoyed it as well. So tell us about the high points of Jazz for Peace. What are the top three experiences that you've had in all these years? I know that's a tough question to kind of hone down.
Well, I mean, because it depends on perspective, you know. I mean, you know, for me personally, might be different for what maybe in the big picture of society, you know. I mean, as far as the world's concerned, I think people are starting to wake up to our concert at the United Nations, which brought together Israeli, Palestinian, and American musicians. But again, that was in 2002, and the sooner we wake up to that, the better, because, you know, if you called me, I could solve that problem in, you know, it's very easily. If you wanted to solve it, you could call me up and we could solve that problem in the Middle East, because I've been working with Israeli, Palestinians, and Americans for 24 years. But, you know, other people will say, hey, what you did down in Rwanda when you brought that country back from the genocide. And of course, if you even talk to anybody in Rwanda, we've received letters from Rwanda saying that, you know, since that, I don't know what happened, what you guys did, but since that week, it was called Amahoro Week, which means peace in their dialect, their African dialect. And since that Amahoro Week, our country just keeps growing and growing, and we've grown in leaps and bounds and all this kinds of stuff, you know. So, I mean, there's a number of different things you could say. I mean, if you went to, there's a poster here in San Ramon, California, and you went there, someone would say, wow, that was a place where they had the first concert where Afghanistan musicians and American musicians united, you know, things like that. So there's all kinds of them. I mean, if you talk to me, it might have been a situation where I went to help a woman who just started an organization on her own because her son had been bullied. There was nobody to address bullying in the schools at that time. She started it herself. I went all the way out there to play a concert for her, to raise funds, publicity and awareness, new and prestigious supporters, sponsors, all those things. I brought an instrument and donated to her, did everything I could. And then when I got back, I felt like maybe just little old me, maybe, you know, maybe I'm a little too altruistic, you know, for this world or whatever. I mean, Vincent van Gogh certainly was, and a lot of greats that I admired it came before me. And then I get a letter from her saying that your concert had a profoundly positive effect on my son. She didn't say, you know, well, we came up a little short on the sponsors, but maybe next year, or any of that stuff. She said, my son has been transformed. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Well, I mean, you couldn't have told me anything better than that. You know what I mean? I mean, the whole thing was to heal her son who had been bullied in school. So, I mean, I was like, oh my God. And the fact that music did it. In other words, you couldn't have done it without this event. You know, you couldn't have done it without me and without music and without my talent and all that I've lived for transformed another person. So, you know, how do you quantify which one? Do you know what I mean? I mean, I look at that as, I felt like, oh my God, that's like, that's a grand slam. I was looking at it as like, well, maybe me, little old me, didn't raise enough money for this organization that they should get to really address, or they didn't get enough sponsors, even though we did do those things and we do them at all of our concerts. But, you know, I was looking at it that way instead of, she saw the transformation in her son. And I'm like, oh my God, no, maybe nobody but me could have done something like that. You know what I mean? I mean, anyone just putting on a fundraiser and throwing some balloons in the air, that's not going to bring him out of you know what I mean? The trauma that he had been experiencing. So in other words, as you look at it perspective, but that's why I'm saying Jazz for Peace is a crown jewel and a gift that I don't want it. You guys can have it. It was for you guys. So accept it. Why don't you just take your award? Why don't you go up on the stage? You know what I mean? It's like, if you won an Academy Award, would you just sit home that night? No, you go down there. You you get a new dress, you dress up, you go down there and accept the award. And we should be accepting this award that I didn't create for myself anyway. So it's not for me, it's for you. And if you don't want to accept it, okay, we can go that way. But what is the point, really? Why would you not accept an award that you won? You know, Jazz for Peace is a testament of so many things. 850 of these events, they all have a story just like the one I'm telling you about these few.
Well, I've had the privilege of founding a couple of things myself. And so I want to ask you about the 4 a.m. question, right? The 4 a.m. question is when you wake up and you say, am I doing the right thing? Am I having the impact that I want? Am I having impacts that I don't want? Do you ever have 4 a.m. questions?
Well, every day I have to wake up to the fact that I've put 24 years into this. Next year will be the 25th anniversary of the first Jazz for Peace concert. And the year after that will be the 25th anniversary of the concert at the United Nations. That's considered by some who know about it to be the most significant cultural event of our time. But, you know, when I wake up this morning and when I wake up tomorrow morning, I have to face a world that is funding peace at 0 and
Yes.
funding war at 100. And what everybody says when they see all my accomplishments, oh my God, how did you survive? How did you make it through financially? How do you make it through financially now? Because you're doing something good, and we know that the only war is funded, the only things that are destructive get all this money. So how do you do it? And again, I have to wake up to the fact that, well, I mean, you know, like we're always looking into monetizing things that are literally absurd. And people go to such great lengths to find ways to, you know, make money off of these crazy things. Why aren't we thinking, how do we make money? Like, look, I mean, I've appeared on hundreds of these, you know, maybe there's a way that a contribution to Jazz for Peace could come through each podcast or whatever. All of those little things would help us get from 0 to 100. Because I used to say 0 to 1, because to be honest with you, at 1% funding for world peace, our world would be you wouldn't even recognize the world. And that's why people told us for 24 years, what you do sounds so good, it sounds too good to be true. Well, it's only too good to be true in a world that's funding war at 100%. If you funded peace if you took 1% of the trillions of dollars, you know how much money that would be if funding peace at 1%, you wouldn't even recognize the world. If you funded it at 100, someone said, you're saying 1%. I am, because even 1% would be, they say, but you mean, you want it to be, I do want, say 100. Well, at 100%, we wouldn't recognize anything. Our planet would look like an alien life form if we funded peace at 100 and war at 0.
Well, that is the reality that we face, as sad as it is. How do you stay motivated through that?
Well, there are, I don't see another way forward. Do you know what I mean? So if I was to not do this, I'd be someplace wanting to do it, you know? And you have a lot of people that say, boy, I wish I could do this, or I wish I could do that. If only I didn't have this, or, you know, this or that, you know what I mean? Everyone's saying that in one form or other. I want to create a world where everyone's doing that, and I want to use our technological advances for that purpose. Because what I see, and the thing is, it's not really a pipe dream. I actually see it because I've been all over the world helping all these outstanding causes. And so I see what would happen. I see the answer. And that is very simple. We could have, instead of 200 billionaires that kind of try to run things and are overwhelmed with the problems because, you know, 200 people can't solve thousands of problems, nor are they passionate about enough of them to solve them. Nor is any of us passionate. You know, most of us are passionate about maybe one thing, maybe a couple things. If we have one thing we're passionate about, that'd be great. So I want to go from 200 billionaires to 200 million visionaries. Mm-hmm. And these are people who, instead of driving around all day in their taxi or whatever they're doing, saying, boy, I sure wish I could do what Rick's doing in my own way, for, you know, in the thing I believe in. But unfortunately, you know, I've got to get blah, blah, blah. When I get home, I'm going to be tired to take a nap. Then I wake up from the nap, and then I got kids, or I got to do this. And then I'm so tired, I go to sleep, and then I got to wake up, and you know what I mean? This whole hamster wheel. Mm-hmm. But we don't really have to. This isn't necessary right now. You know what I mean? This is not entirely necessary. We can create we can create hundreds of millions of visionaries because all of those people have the passion inside them already. They already have the passion to do something that would greatly benefit our world. And it all comes down to one thing and one thing only, and that's a famous quote that I had. If you ever type in Rick DellaRatta famous quote into Google, you get this quote. And I said it only days after 9/11, like I said it on that interview after I read the poem. Someone interviewed me, and in the interview I said, if we just fill our souls up with our greatest qualities, we're known, human beings are known for artistry, creativity, intellectuality, humanity. These are qualities that we already have. We're born with, we have them, you have them, Matthew has them, we all have them. If we embrace them collectively, not just one. I mean, a lot of people are embracing one, and good for them, because they don't have, they don't have the time to embrace all of them. Maybe they have a lot on their mind, whatever it is. But what if we embrace all of them collectively? We will have a better chance at avoiding the behavior that leads to destruction. Well, I said that not knowing why we would have a better chance. Why will we have a better chance? Because our level of human consciousness will be raised, just like it was that day when I was 6 years old, playing a piano and hearing those sounds and raising my frequency. If you embrace our greatest qualities collectively, your frequency will be raised in its own natural way. And again, that will take you out of some of the problems. You say we can't solve them, but actually when you raise your human consciousness, you resolve them, because you're just you're in another level, you're at another stratosphere. And we all have that potential. So we really just have to recognize, again, back to that fractal of recognizing a gift that we have, an award that we have. The award, we've been awarded the opportunity to strive to a higher level of which we've been awarded with potential. We've been awarded with potential. We've got an Oscar for a potential. Here's your Oscar award for potential. We just have to accept the award and rise to the potential that we have within us. That's, a part of us.
One of the things that the Jazz for Peace does, of course, is exactly at that, helping other people rise to their potential. Tell us about your grant program.
So, I was trying to I was bouncing around almost like, you remember that show, The Beverly Hillbillies?
Sure.
Okay, so, Jed Clampett, I mean, he was a poor mountaineer. I was a poor mountaineer, barely kept my family fed, walking around with this poem. You know what I mean? I didn't know what to do with it. I had this poem and it looks powerful and looks amazing. What should I do? So I'm asking people, what could I do? Because I'd been playing some concerts around New York, and I was like, there's all these outstanding causes. I was saying to this woman once who worked in that sector. She said, there's lots of them, Rick. I said, well, like, what do they need? And she said, well, she said they told me some things they needed. Funds, she said, was one of them. Naturally, they all say that. But she said some other thing. And I said, wait a minute, those things could be provided by little old me. I could put on an event for them because I have experience putting on events. Because a lot of times they make the artists put on the event because, they're too lazy, or there's no event going on. There's nothing going on. The artist has to play a role. So I knew a lot about events, and I'd played at so many events all my life, even as a sideman in bands, I played all over the world. I said, I could help these people in that way. So we started contacting nonprofits. They were like, yeah, wow, oh my God. Of course we need to, broaden our donor base. You know what I mean? Of course we need. And a lot we find out as we were going through doing the benefit concert series, helping one, helping another in New York City. They would tell us, we got letters. In fact, there's a page, jazzforpeace.wordpress.com/about. And that page is endless with letters from these people that basically created our empowerment grant program by telling us that we had done this for them on this concert, that for them on that concert. So some would say, wow, I remember having to go out to dinner with a guy who insisted to take me out to dinner because of the amount of funds he had raised. But other people would say, those sponsors that we got from your event, they are so helpful to us year in and year out. You know what I mean? They are still with us. They are on the train with us. I said, wow, we should do that for all of them. We should pass that forward to each organization. And again, uniting and rejuvenating our supporters and broadening our donor base. If you look at our empowerment tree, which I believe you would see on that page, you would see a tree where at the very top is the intended result. And again, that answers your question. Our event makes an organization better funded, but also more befriended because we have expanded their donor base. It makes them stronger because we have rejuvenated the supporters that they have. It makes them more sponsored because we get sponsors at the local level, and then we get sponsors also at the national level once we have those branches in place. It makes them more prestigious. And, in human consciousness, human conscious expert told me prestigious, not really high up. But nevertheless, our concerts, if you see all these letters from all these world leaders and all these people, these organizations are a lot more prestigious. They stand out from the crowd, permanently because of the people that we bring on board, whether they're celebrities or world leaders, et cetera, who, again, we find synergy with their mission and that specific person who happens to love that idea,
What are the final thoughts that you have for us today, Rick?
0 to 100. So jazzforpeace.org/0, just the number 0, TO 100, the number 100. Okay, so I brought this up to you, 0 to 1. We want to go from 0. We're funding, we're police at 0. Where do we want to go? 100. How do we want to do it? Want to fund you. We want to help you out in the Philippines, as I was talking to your assistant before. We want to help somebody out there. So we want you watching this show, jazzforpeace.org/0 to 100.pdf. So you go to that page and you will see what someone else did to get funds from Jazz for Peace to help them. So it's a letter. You could just take that letter, rearrange it with your name or whatever, and show it to an outstanding cause that you feel is legitimate and would really help make our world better, our community better, whoever they are, if they were just better funded, more sponsored, more befriended, etc., than they ever were before. And that's what we'll do to make them that way.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you so much for joining us today on Experience Over Expectation. We really appreciate you coming on and the wonderful presentation and performance that you gave us. Join us next time. Thank you. Join us next time for Experience Over Expectation. I'm Mary McCorvey.
You've been listening to Mary McCorvey's Experience Over Expectations podcast. Be sure to subscribe today on YouTube and Substack, or listen wherever you find your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in.